your city of Indianapolis of late, particularly here in this area of the east side of Indianapolis, the Broad Ripple area downtown, outside of the bars, the gin mills, the nightclubs, the places where people ought to be able to go without having to fear that they're going to lose life and limb. It's not at all different or unique for what is happening throughout America. I'm here to speak to you about the Guardian Angels. And the Guardian Angels is a concept that I created 31 years ago in the belly of the beast in the South Bronx in New York City. How many of you have heard of the Bronx in New York City? Raise your hand. Yeah, obviously, it's a matter of great pride. It's the house that Ruth built where Yankee Stadium is. And obviously, we know the Yankees are going to go on to become world champions again. And to all of you who may think differently, oofa to you. But it's also a place that's known for a lot of negativity. We have guardian angels who have traveled a great distance here today in order to share in what they do in their communities with you so you could do likewise. Because they also represent the good of their city, but they carry a lot of baggage. There are parts of their cities that are controlled by the Uzi-toting, dope-sucking, psychopathic killing machines. And they've vowed and they've made their volunteer effort to dare to care to try to improve the quality of life of their neighborhood. But they're not selfish. They're not into this I and me thing. They believe in the concept of us and we, and that's why they're here. So I'd first like to introduce you to a man who is our national coordinator, who has been busting his shoes for many years, who I met many years ago in the CTA subway system of Chicago when he was just a young little whippersnapper, no more than knee-high. And he saw us walk into that train, and he saw that pride that it was emitting from every one of the young men and young women who was a guardian angel in Chicago. And as you can tell from the group that is collected here today, you see the reflection. We are a reflection of the community. We're black, white, Hispanic, Asian, male, female, and matters not. All voluntarily coming together without weapons, without any special powers or privileges, to try to help those who can least help themselves. The women, the children, the infirm, the elderly. Doing what it is has always been what you learned about in the Good Samaritan. You do it because it's the right thing to do, not because you're getting paid, not because you're a part of the city apparatus, not because you're part of public safety, but every man, every woman should be doing this for one another on a regular basis. And this young man at that point obviously reached out and touched and felt that positivity that was emerging from us as opposed to the negativity of where he was at that point. And then he dedicated the rest of his lives to not only becoming a good guardian angel patroller and a good guardian angel local leader, but our national coordinator. So let's give it up right now for a guy who had that synergy with Mr. Howard, who came together because of his concept and breathed life into it. Let's give it up for our national coordinator of the Guardian Angels from Chicago 3rd Rail, better known as Miguel Fuentes. And in addition, all the Chi-Town Guardian Angels who have come with him here today, let's give it up. Nice round of applause. And coming from a lot far away to join all of you here today, I remember this city well, St. Louis. First time I went there was in the middle of winter in the 80s. And I said to my father, Chester was from the south side of Chicago recently, I said, Dad, I got to tell you, I think it's time for you and Mom to move. I'll do everything within my power to make that transition for you. And my father looked at me and said, oh, you're a tough guy? Let me tell you, the Santini brothers are not going to move me, only Guarino's funeral home, and it's going to be feet first on a gurney. And he used those words that he raised me with. He said, son, we're going to improve, we're not going to move. We're going to stay and fight for what we know is right. We're not going to wave a white flag. We're not going to fold like a cheap camera. We're not going to surrender to those cretins with chromosome damage, to those enemies of society, to those individuals who have taken a solemn vow to destroy our way of life, our way of being. But it was at that point that you understand that we've experienced similar circumstances. Because you've made that same solid vow, many of you. You've been part of community organizations. You've been part of efforts to improve your community. I know many of you believe right down to the marrow of your bone that you want to improve, you don't want to move. You don't want those few to all of a sudden make your life so miserable that you have to uproot your life and not be able to turn over what little property you may own or what little piece of Americana you have, that little slice of the pie that you were hoping that you could turn over to your children and children's children in this America, land of the free and home of the brave. I mean, think of it. As I speak to all of you right now, there are men and women, many from this immediate area of Indiana, who are dying in battle each and every day in Afghanistan and Iraq, defending people and giving them freedom in foreign ports of call. And we pledge our allegiance to the flag. We sing the Star-Spangled Banner. And this is America, the land of the free and the home of the brave. And how many of us, particularly the men, have chosen not to be brave, have chosen to become weak, have chosen to be missing in action, so that other young men emerge within the community to become the role models to the children and children's children and lead them on a one-way trip to Beluga. How many times in the past, when we were growing up through the 70s and 80s, did people adopt a philosophy that was more along the lines of MYOB, mind your own business? People started thinking to themselves, wait, that's not my grandmother, that's not my mother, that's not my brother, that's my sister, that's not my family, that's not my immediate responsibility. Why should I get involved? I need to mind my own business. So what do people do? Instead of reacting to an us and we, instead of coming to the aid of one another in a neighborhood, on a block, in a community, they opted to put window shades on their eyes, cotton balls in their ears, and a zipper on their mouth. They became apathetic and indifferent. And it allowed crime time to grow. And then in this new era, the subculture of hip-hop, the madness that has been created in the streets as a result of young people mimicking and imitating what they hear, how they got to keep it real, that's how they earn their stripes, that's how they get cred in the hood. The new mantra is snitches get stitches and end up in ditches. And how many times young men and women are afraid to even go to their parent or parents, their guardians, afraid to confide in their teachers or social workers. Oh, heavens to Betsy that they actually give information to the police or an investigator to solve a crime. They've actually been told through this negative form of propaganda that if they get taken, if they're a victim of a crime, they need to shut their mouths. Either they go pick up a gun and get their vengeance and get theirs back, or just shut up, sucker, be a poo-putt, and just know that the code of the streets is you never rat anyone out. You never drop dime. You never snitch anybody out. Well, let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, I'm probably the biggest snitch in America. I live each and every day. When I wake up, I hope I don't touch wood, because then I know it's real good. And I live to eat the Parmesan cheese because I'm the biggest rat in America. I'll rat them out if they're members of the geriatric espresso sipping psychotic group of organized crime members known as La Cosa Nostra, the Mafia, the Black Hand. And I'll rat them out if they just stuck a toolie in your back and cop $5 out of your pocket. I live to rat out criminals, because it's criminals that destroy our neighborhood, it's criminals that poison our way of life, and it's prisoners that we become because we are becoming paralyzed by fear by the criminals. So let me tell you something, you got any cheese out there, I'm ready to eat it. I'm ready to rat out criminals till the day I die. Now you tell that to the hood rats, and the hood rats will say, oh man, you're a sucker. You're out of your mind. You're going to catch some bullets. You're going to be 6 feet under. You're going to be room temperature. And look, I can tell a story to all of you to suggest that I didn't just rat out regular, average, everyday, okie-dokie criminals, local schlubs, local miscreants. I ratted out the #1 member of organized crime, John Gotti Sr. How many of you have heard the name John Gotti Sr.? You know who he is. He's an enemy of society. In fact, after committing a whole host of crimes, after going on trial 4 times, eventually he wasn't able to buffalo or frighten the jury any longer. They found him guilty on 24 counts of ordering the execution of people. and they assigned him not far away to Marion, the federal penitentiary in Illinois. And as I've often said, on a day in which all of a sudden our maker decided that's it, lights out for John Gotti Sr., I know he went straight to hell without an asbestos suit. I know he did. Because of all the damage that he has done. To this day, if you notice, you have hip-hop members and rappers who exploit the virtues of those who have been participating in organized crime. They'll talk about Gotti's, Gambinos, Genovese, Lucchese's, Bonanos, Colombos, as if this is the flavor of life. And I took him on. And as a result of that, his son, John Gotti Jr., ordered that I be killed on 2 separate occasions. On one time, they attacked me with baseball bats, tooled me up so much I could read and authenticate the Joe DiMaggio autograph on the Louisville Slugger. Hit me in my medulla, hit me in my cerebellum. As you can tell, I'm a little titched. I haven't been the same way since. But you know something? It wasn't just my physical abilities or my martial arts prowess. I have a little bit of that street survival in me. You know why I'm alive and walking around today and inhaling air here in Indianapolis and exhaling. Obviously, the man upstairs decided it wasn't time for me to punch out the clock. Wasn't time. And because I survived that attack, I took a licking and came back ticking. And at the time, then, as I am now, a broadcaster on a major radio station in New York City in the morning, on that day when John Gotti Sr. heard that I was living, and I had actually ratcheted it up and was talking more yin-yang about him, he told his son, look, this time I want that guy iced. I want him dead. I never want to hear him again on the radio. And the plot that they hatched on June 19th of 1992 was a pretty doggone good one. In order to get to the radio station that I broadcast from each and every day from Madison Square Garden in New York, where oftentimes the Knicks have beaten the Indiana Pacers, as you know, from time to time. I really know how to stick it, right? I'm on a roll, and then I got to bring that up. But anyway, that's where I was broadcasting from. And the way I would get to the radio station each and every day is I'd take a yellow cab in New York City. It's not quite like the veins and arteries of the city taking buses and subway trains, but when you got to get there, you got no choice. And normally back then in the early 90s, whoever the cab driver was, they didn't speak English. Maybe they were here 3 days, had been tending a flock of goats outside of Armand Jordan, and you basically had to tell them how to get there. They could barely drive that car. So on that morning of June 19th of 1992, I hailed a cab, I got into it, and the cab driver said, oh, Curtis, I'm one of your fans. Where you going? I thought I hit the lotto that day. Here's a guy who speaks English, understands me, knows who I am, and knows where he's going. I said, hey, Matt, Madison Square Garden, real quick, I'm running late. He said, no problem, sit back, Max, and relax. And that's exactly what I did. Started reading the newspapers, preparing for the radio show. He went a few miles north, and instead of going west where he should have gone, he turned east. And at that particular time, I said, hey, Mac, I thought you know where you were going. Turn this hack around. And it was as if he was driving Miss Daisy. He was oblivious to what I was saying. And in fact, I heard him put the pedal to the metal. I heard the transmission starting to grind. And I said, uh-oh. I have a feeling this ain't what it's supposed to be. But I was half stung God. Remember, I had just woken up in bed. You know what it's like when you wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. Some of you have never woken up at 4 o'clock in the morning. So you're like half in the bag. And I'm in the back of that cab, and I'm trying to sort of wake up as quickly as possible. And all of a sudden I said, hey, Mac, turn this hack around. And immediately at that point, I heard some ruffling up in front of the cab. Underneath the dashboard, unbeknownst to me, was a gunman. And the gunman popped up like a jack-in-the-box. And he put his backside on the dashboard. And all of a sudden, he had a .38 special aimed at my 3-piece set. And I'm not talking about the knife, the spoon, and the fork.